Welcome, everybody, to the March 14th, 2024 meeting of the Fitchburg Zoning Board of Appeals. I am pleased to see so many people here wanting to participate in their local government. Sometimes we're here without much company, so it is nice to see all of you. I am calling this meeting to order. Please be advised that FATV is conducting an audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone else in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating your name and city of residence. Okay. I see none. There are usually none because FATV does it all for us now. At this time, I'm going to ask that everyone remember, including myself, to place all of your electronic devices in silent mode so we can all enjoy each other's company uninterrupted. To open the meeting, I am going to ask Mr. McLaughlin to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. All right. In a moment, I am going to call the first and only matter on our agenda. I am going to just repeat the reminder that I gave people before the meeting started for those who are also with us online. There are many people here who would like to express their opinion and some people who would just like to watch. In order to allow the greatest opportunity for everybody to have their opinion stated, I am going to be limiting the amount of time everybody has to speak. And that limit will be visible to you by the 3 buttons on the podium. So when you're green, you can keep going. When you're yellow, you're nearing the end of the time. When it's red, you need to conclude. And the one thing I'm going to say about this is that in order to get this through, I am going to be strictly enforcing that time limit, so please do keep an eye on it. Keep your statements concise so that you can get your point across to the board, okay? I am going to start out with having the applicant make their presentation. While I'm going to ask a few questions along the way, we will then go to public comment when the applicant is concluded. When public comment is concluded, and if we get to the point where we have many people expressing the same thoughts or opinions, I might draw us to the end at that point. We will be allowing people online to make comment. When I look for online comment, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand so I know that you want to make a comment. And we will intersperse online and in-person comment. I also wanted to just make a brief statement about the matter before us. I know people that have comments on a lot of different things, on a lot of different aspects of this. The issue that is before this board is an appeal of the building commissioner's determination that the applicant would require a special permit. The applicant states that they are exempt from the special permit requirement as their primary use is educational. So when we are listening to the applicant and to public comment, the things that are relevant to our decision are this question: is the primary use educational? There is not a request for a special permit before us. And one more thing I'm just going to say, because, I know that there are a lot of opinions one way or the other on this matter. There is no person on this board or in this audience whose life and family has not been touched by substance abuse or alcohol abuse. And when statements are made, which you are free to make whatever relevant statement you would like, I am just going to ask that you try to bear in mind to speak with kindness about other people. Okay? With
Madam
that
Chair.
being,
Madam Chair,
yes,
can I make a statement, opening statement?
briefly, yes.
Just for a point of clarification, and just to inform me, I look at this application in front of us, and it's for 72 to 80 Franklin Road. Mr. McLaughlin and myself did our due diligence and went up to 72 to 80 Franklin Road, and that has 4 businesses in it. And when speaking to the owners of the businesses that are there at that address, they all say that they have 6-year leases on the property with the landlord. Now, I looked through the packet. I didn't see anything from the landlord stating that these people are renting any area from them. And I'd like to know, seeing that we advertise this as 72 to 80 Franklin, do we have the right to proceed, or do we have to get a better address?
Okay. So this is a good question, and what I'm going to do is call the matter, have the applicant come up, and make a statement on this issue, and our city solicitor's office is here, and then I'm going to look to the office for a response on that. One more thing, Mr. Reynolds, before we call? Okay.
Yes. Perhaps it would be also worth mentioning, as you set expectations with people about how we're going to conduct the evening, that all questions would be coming to you through the chair,
Yes.
just as a reminder to kind of keep the decorum with things. I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah. So in a public meeting, that all discourse, all statements go through the chair. So even if there is a question that you would like to ask the applicant, address the question to the chair, and we will either have the applicant give a response at that time, or what we may do is note these questions and gather them for response together. We'll see how that goes. And I really, really do appreciate everyone's cooperation here today. All right, I am calling the first and only case, ZBA 24-2. The applicant is Spectrum Health Systems, Inc. Property is listed as 72-80 Franklin Road. This is an appeal to overrule the building commissioner's decision under section 181.9222 of the Fitchburg zoning ordinance that they are required to seek a special permit and site plan approval for the medication-assisted therapy clinic use of the subject property due to the fact that Spectrum's proposed use qualifies as an educational use exempt under section 181.3 in a commercial district. All right, could the applicant please come and sit at the table? Okay. All right, and I'm going to ask you each to state your name and city of residence and your function here.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Jill Mikesell, and I'm an attorney for Spectrum Health Systems, Inc.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the meeting. And you, ma'am?
Good evening. I'm Kristen Noah. I'm the Chief Behavioral Health Officer for Spectrum Health Systems.
Okay, thank you. And you, sir?
Frank Height, I'm the Vice President of Environmental Care for Spectrum Health Systems. I reside in Worcester.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Nola, did you say?
Oxford, Massachusetts.
Oxford, Massachusetts, thank you. Is there any other petitioner, member, or representative here, or is it the three of you?
It's the three of us, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You ask them to speak up. We can't hear them. The lawyer didn't put her city residence.
So with Council, could you just state the city in which your business address is?
Sure, my business address is in Boston, Massachusetts.
Thank you. And I appreciate that, but generally I'm not going to, please don't interrupt the discourse, but I do understand. I want you all to be able to hear. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So we've had a question, as just stated by Mr. Byrne, about whether, and I see this as a few issues, whether the correct address was advertised, and that goes to whether or not notice was properly given for this hearing. And then the further question is about what is the status of your interest in this property, and I understand that to be a question about standing. Okay, so I am going to, I was just looking this up as after the comment, and I am going to share screen here because I'm not sure that our council is familiar with the area. And so I'm going to show a visual overhead of the property. Okay. So the area marked in yellow is the area, and this is our assessor's GIS information. The area marked in yellow is listed under the assessor's records as 72-80 Franklin Road. And I'm going to get a little closer on this, understanding that this is the way most people online are viewing this. So the building in this property is the long strip mall that you see right here. Okay. It is my understanding that the numbered individual stores on this strip mall go from 7280, which is down in this location, and then they increase, I believe, to, is it beyond 100? As you go down to the end location. As you know, there was no lease submitted with the application. There was no interior plan that I saw. There was a reproduction of the there we go, the assessor's card. And this is the notation that was made about where the property would be located. And then if I go back to the assessor's map, that is down at this end, which is a higher numbered unit than 72-80. Can you make any clarification on that as far as the unit that you intend to locate in?
I'm going to have Mr. Height answer this question. He is responsible for the property.
Hi. So we are interested in operating in Fitchburg. We are working with a realtor. This property was located for us, and I don't believe I've ever had any direct contact with the landlord, but when working through our broker, this property was originally described to us as 481 Electric Ave.
Okay.
I went online and did the form of intent with the building department, and as I was preparing that, I went to the zoning website, and there is no 481 Electric Ave. So I discovered that card that shows the property that we're interested in leasing as 72-80. Oh.
I just want to make clear, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think this is important.
Yep.
Spectrum has entered into a lease for the property. It is paying monthly rent as we speak, even though the premises is not being used at the moment because we're awaiting a determination by the board. So I did want to make that clear. I don't mean to interrupt.
Above my pay grade, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you. So when I filed the form of intent, I had to list the proper property, which on your little blue box under the city of Fitchburg says 7280, and the map shows the entire building. So that was the information that I was using to apply for the form of intent.
Okay. And am I correct in understanding that this end of the...
Yes, it would be the end cap
end
unit,
unit.
yes.
Okay, and you said you're under a current lease agreement?
That's correct, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
So current possessory interest in the property?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Costa, could you give us an opinion? I think the standing question is resolved if there is an existing lease and an existing possessory interest. But could you give us an opinion on the notice issue?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for the record, Adam Costa, City Solicitor. So I'd concur that I think the standing issue is addressed, and that is typically the issue that is of greatest concern to zoning boards of appeal. In fact, the reality is in proceedings like these, standing is rarely an issue at all. Standing is most often an issue that is addressed by the courts. It's often raised for the first time before the courts and never before a zoning board of appeals. But from time to time, I have had applications before ZBAs where standing becomes an issue because an applicant can't establish that they have either the permission of the landowner or some form of possessory interest, be it a lease agreement or an option or a purchase and sale agreement. It sounds as if that exists here. I would certainly caution the board that representations are one thing, but providing some documentary proof of a possessory interest is something different. So very often landowners won't want to provide an entire copy of a lease agreement because those documents are not necessarily public, but they can provide a redacted copy or even a letter agreement, a form of lease or notice of lease to establish that they have that possessory interest that would be sufficient to confer standing. The second issue and a related issue is whether the notice is satisfactory. And typically in situations like this, the advice I'll give the ZBAs I represent is it's the risk of the applicant with respect to notice. If proper parties don't receive notice and an applicant pursues a permitting process and obtains a permit through that process, and then there's a later challenge, the fact that that notice wasn't provided may expand the opportunities for challenges and the length of time within which a challenge can be raised. If there was an obvious error, I have had boards say they're concerned. So if the address listed on the notice here were 1 Main Street and the property was at 80 Smith Street, I might say that those are entirely different properties within a community, and therefore there's an error in the notice, and the board may feel in that instance that there's a need to renotice and not continue the substantive hearing. In a situation like this, where the address in the notice is 72 to 80 Franklin Road, and the way that I understand it, it's possible, based upon the markup of that assessor's property record card, that the area where this lease will sit is on the opposite side of the property, so maybe the higher numbered, maybe it's 85 or 90 or 100.
Yeah, over the 80.
Over the 80. So outside of that range of 72 to 80, I would say two things. First is, it sounds as if somebody was interested and curious about what the property was and they put that information into your online GIS system, they would have been shown that map you just showed us, which includes the entire area within yellow, because that's the area that is characterized as 72 to 80 Franklin Road, even if ultimately it includes higher numbered properties. But I appreciate that the reality may be that it's 85 or 100 or somewhere in between those numbers. So I view this as the risk of the applicant and less of a concern for the board. I don't view it as a fatal flaw in the notice, but certainly I can appreciate that there is an inconsistency here between what your assessor's records say and maybe how the property is actually numbered and the portion of that property that might be used by Spectrum.
Okay, and would I be correct in stating that if any member of the public who did have standing and an interest in this matter felt that they had not received adequate notice, they could pursue that through an appeal of a decision by the board as well?
They could. So, of course, any aggrieved party has the right to file an appeal of a decision of the board. Typically, that appeal period is 20 days from the date that the decision is filed with the city clerk's office. The statutes provide for a lengthier period of time. It's a 90-day period in the event that an individual doesn't get the requisite notice. And I'm aware of case law as well that even beyond that 90-day period, in unique circumstances, there may be the opportunity to bring forward an appeal if a party didn't get proper notice. So, again, this is really where the risk lies with the applicant. I've had applicants in situations like this say that they choose to move forward. I've had others that say they want to be sure all their T's are crossed and their I's are dotted, and they choose to simply continue when an issue like this is brought to their attention, renotice and properly notice with the correct street address, and then continue the proceeding on a later date.
Okay. Thank you very much, Attorney Costa.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I just add one thing that I think is important?
Yes.
We had filed as part of our application the property owner authorization. I know you had asked a question earlier as to whether we had a possessory interest, and I just wanted to make it clear that this document is signed by the owner of the property, and it reflects that we are the tenant of the property, and it's been filed. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well.
So I am aware that that was signed, but it was also docu-signed without the requisite verification of the docu-sign. We do not have regulations on what is required with a docu-sign signature because I think this is one of the first few ones we've received.
I see.
So I will say that I don't feel we got complete verification, but because we don't have any regulation on that, I allowed the application to proceed as complete, but I did still want to ask the question. Are you
Understood.
able to provide a copy of the signed lease to the ZBA? And I understand if, for instance, amounts are redacted.
We can get you a lease or a notice of lease, yes,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
I'm going to ask if that's provided, let's see, today's Thursday, by Monday. Is that adequate time?
That's adequate, thank you.
Thank you. Please do so. All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
may I ask a very, very brief question for clarification?
On the subject that we're talking about, yes.
I'd like to buy a vowel and ask, what is the address?
The address is 72 to 80 Franklin Road.
No, it isn't. So what is the address?
If one were to go to the actual
see.
site and look at the door, what would the number be? You said that it was first introduced to you as 481 Electric Ave.
481 Electric Ave.
Question, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mercedes, on notifying abutters, how far away does a butter have to be notified? 200 feet?
For those who could
300
not
feet.
hear, the question was, what is the radius of notice for abutters? And 300 feet was the response. Attorney Costa.
Well, that's more than 200 feet from where 7280 is to where they pointed out that they're supposed to be. So there are people that were not notified of this meeting.
So there is, I think, a very obvious issue with notice. One of the issues is that notice is to the owners of property as produced by the assessor's records. And we have a retail plaza where most of the actual occupants are tenants and do not receive notice directly.
There are residents behind it.
There are residents behind it, too. Attorney Costa, since you are with us today, could you review what is required for notice in this situation?
I'd be happy to. So notice is not determined community by community in Massachusetts. It's dictated by the statute. So Chapter 48, Section 11 specifies that notice is required to all parties in interest. That's the legal term that's used. And then parties in interest is defined by the statute as abutters, abutters to abutters within 300 feet of the property, and abutters opposite public or private ways. So that's the standard. And the way that it typically works, and these days I can remember 15 years ago when you'd go into engineering departments and they'd take out their compass and they'd measure. These days most of it can be done through GIS tools, but the way it typically works is there's a 300-foot radius, and it's not measured from the center of the property. It's measured from the outskirts of the property. So if the property is shaped like the property here is shaped, you're going to end up having a 300-foot radius that's shaped similar to the property. Every abutter and every abutter to an abutter within that 300 feet radius gets notice. The point the chair made is a correct point, which is the statute requires notice to the owners of record of those properties. And so if these are highly tenanted properties, the tenants don't receive notice, they're not required to. What the statute does require, in addition to that notice to abutters and abutters to abutters, is that notice be published in a newspaper of general circulation in each of 2 successive weeks, the first publication being at least 14 days prior to the opening of the hearing. The idea being that there's some redundancy there. The same individuals that receive the written notice may also see it in the newspaper, but the hope is that tenants and others in the community that might be interested, even if they're beyond that radius, or they wouldn't get notice because they're not an owner of record, the hope is that they will see it in the newspaper as well. Again, newspapers aren't read the way that they used to be, but that's the way the law stands, and it hasn't changed in about 40 years.
Okay. I am once again going to momentarily share my screen. This is the information that gets generated by the assessor's office. And this is the 300-foot buffer. If you see that red circle around 72 to 80 Franklin Road, any parcel that shows up in that dark pink is within that radius of 300-foot abutters. Again, if there is a defect in notice and a member of the public feels that they would like to exercise any rights affected by that, Attorney Costa, they would seek an appeal of any decision, correct?
That's correct. And I guess one other point I want to make, because it's responsive to something that at least one board member commented on before, is I understand that this property, or at least the way that it's been noticed, is as 72 to 80 Franklin Road, and there's been some discussion about whether the number, the proper address should be 85 or 90 or some higher number. So long as, for purposes of notice, what came up in your GIS records as 72 to 80 is what you see on that map before that includes the entire area outlined in yellow. And so long as the measurement, that 300-foot radius, was measured from the boundaries of that yellow area, again, the yellow area is going to include those properties that might be higher numbered. So my guess is that there aren't going to be individuals, so long as that's how it was done, that didn't get notice that should have gotten notice simply because this property address should be 90 or 95. For that reason alone. But again, I'm not representing that I have any actual notice of errors or lack of errors, but it seems to me that if that's how the measurement was done, the proper parties should have received notice, meaning the owners within 300 feet that are abutters or abutters to abutters.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And advertisement was conducted via the Sentinel and Enterprise, Ms. Mata, correct? Okay. All right. Did Commissioner Zamel still want to speak? Okay, all right.
No, I was just going to say that if the best of my knowledge, that entire plaza fit within that 72 to 80 address. I questioned it as well in the very beginning, and what I had been told by the assessor's department was that encompassed the entire property.
Okay. And I'll just note that having looked it up just now, the 481 Electric Ave that you referenced in the beginning is not a property that comes up on the assessor's GIS records at all. Whether there is something on the ground labeled as such, I do not know. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Reynolds.
According to Google, 481 is over the door, or the end unit.
Is the end unit. Okay. So, if we get to the point where Google is our authority, we'll be going by that. All right. So, with those preliminary matters having been discussed, I think the issue has been raised and the public has been made aware of the issue as well as any rights they may choose to exercise under that issue. I am going to proceed at this time to have the petitioner present the petition. Thank you.
Thank you.
And counsel, I'm not going to limit your time, but I am going to ask that you remain as concise as I know you can be.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Can you hear me with this, or? Yes. Okay.
Can everybody in the audience hear her? Thank you.
If you can't hear me, please let me know. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, great. Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Jill Brenner-Mikesell, and as I mentioned a moment ago, I represent Spectrum Health Systems. On December 4th of last year, Spectrum filed a form of intent seeking to use the property at issue to operate a medication-assisted treatment substance abuse program, which has a primarily educational use. The services that will be provided at this property will replace Spectrum's Leominster facility location, which was destroyed by flooding in September of 2023.
Do you have any knowledge, counsel, of the extent of the destruction? Just as I asked because I did go see the building where you were located in Leominster, and from the exterior there's no visible damage. That doesn't mean there's no damage, but just out of curiosity, what had happened there?
I think I'm going to turn it to Mr. Height to answer that question. Thank you.
So that flooding was widely publicized.
Oh, yes.
And I would say it was biblical. I was on scene that night as it was going on. There's a river or a brook that runs behind our space, maybe 10 feet behind the back wall. That is controlled by a dam. That dam burst. The water came up. The water was approximately 4 feet high from one end of our space to the other. It was rushing water. It entered one end of the building and blew out the door at the other end of the building. It was total destruction. The space was not inhabitable without major renovations. And we agreed with our landlord to terminate our tenancy due to the, destruction of the property.
Is the whole building unoccupiable now? Or just the portion for you?
Just mainly the portion that we were in. The building has a couple of additions. We were in a rear addition, only us, and that part was destroyed. The building next door partially collapsed. The tenant on the other side of the parking lot had less damage because they sat slightly higher. I can't speak to whether they're in there or not. I don't know.
Was there any attempt to relocate within Leominster? Was there no property available within Leominster?
Yeah, we were unable to find suitable location in Leominster, and we identified this site.
Usually Mayor Mazzarella can work miracles looking to, help somebody find a location.
Dean's a good guy.
Yeah.
We spoke with him.
Okay. Thank you for the diversion. Please continue.
And so further to that point, there are many individuals who are receiving services in Leominster that are now, who are Fitchburg residents, I should add, who are now traveling to Worcester for those services. So there's a serious need to get this program up and running as soon as possible. Through this appeal, Spectrum appeals the acting building commissioner's zoning determination, which was issued on December 7th, determining that Spectrum must apply for a special permit and a site plan review because it classified the use under the Fitchburg zoning ordinance as medical treatment center / facility / clinic. For reasons that I'm now going to address, the decision was an error and should be reversed as the proper classification for the property's use is exempt use educational. Spectrum's use, as I will get into some detail about in a moment, is protected by the Dover Amendment, which is Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3, which allows nonprofit educational organizations to be exempt from otherwise applicable zoning bylaws. Thus, our position here is that no special permit is required, given that Spectrum's use is properly classified as educational exempt. And as I'm going to get into a little bit later on in my presentation, Spectrum has Spectrum's use for the same type of program as it's looking to operate here has been classified as educational use exempt on many occasions, at least 5 of which have been resolved in court. And so this is not a new, while it might sound, I understood sort of from the audience that surprising that this is classified as educational. Education isn't simply sort of the traditional education when, children go to school and sit in a classroom. The definition of education, as has been very broadly defined by the courts in Massachusetts, go well beyond the sort of typical classic confines of the classroom. So before I get into sort of the precedent and the law, I want to talk about Spectrum and what it does and what it wants to do here and why its use is educational. Spectrum is a private, not-for-profit educational organization dedicated to improving the lives of individuals impacted by addiction and or mental illness. For more than 50 years, it has developed a continuum of substance abuse and mental health treatment services throughout Massachusetts and has served thousands upon thousands upon thousands of patients each day. This continuum of care is very broad. It includes inpatient detox, residential treatment, medication for substance use disorders, outpatient counseling, and peer recovery support, among other things. The cornerstone of Spectrum's program is abstinence from drugs and alcohol and the promotion of pro-social norms and behaviors. Spectrum has the goal to improve each client's quality of life and functional abilities by teaching them cognitive and behavioral skills that will assist them in returning to a healthy and productive lifestyle. As I mentioned earlier, at this property, Spectrum seeks to operate a medication-assisted treatment program, of which it presently operates approximately 12. I think Leominster was the 13th, so this would be the 13th. Spectrum operates this program pursuant to licensure by the Department of Public Health. And I will say that this type of treatment has proven to be very effective for persons who are experiencing opioid use disorder. Now I want to talk about this specific program, highlighting the educational use. Spectrum's program is centered on educational content, which satisfies the educational purpose requirement of the Dover Amendment. The program's primary goal is education for participants to learn real-life ways to help them lead a productive, healthy, pro-social life, free of alcohol and drugs, without crime, and to teach patients cognitive and behavioral skills that will assist them in maintaining a healthy life. The program is designed to improve participants' quality of life and functional abilities by teaching them how to live productively without drugs and alcohol. Medication dispensing by a nurse occurs only in designated morning hours between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. And I will say that the dispensing of medication takes about 2 minutes. It's very quick. I also will highlight that recently there was a change in federal regulations which will allow more participants to take the medication at home. And so that will limit even further the 2 minutes per patient that it takes to provide the medication. In addition to the 2 minutes spent with the dispensing of medication, each participant in the program receives between 2.5 to 5 hours of education and behavior modification each week through groups and counseling. And some of those, I'm just going to go through some of those types of educational classes that the individuals will take, which will be in a classroom. So when the property is set up, there will be a classroom with about 15 seats in it. All participants take a class entitled Orientation Education, which educates them on what to expect during the process of their treatment and education. And then participants can choose from either one or two or more educational programs that they think would help them the most. And those include, for example, overdose prevention education, parenting education, job readiness education, life and recovery skills education, and relapse prevention education, among possibly others. The program will serve approximately 200 to 250 clients with approximately 70 per day. As I said a moment ago, each participant, if you lay out sort of how they're going to be spending their time, about 2 minutes on daily dosing if they're not prescribed the medication to take at home, coupled with a few 2 to 5 hours of educational programming each week. Now I just want to talk a bit about the Fitchburg zoning bylaw and why this use should be classified as educational exempt and not as medical. So Spectrum's principal use is an exempt educational use under Section 181.313, Table of Principal Use Regulations, Section B. I note that the definition of medical treatment center / facility / clinic requires that, quote, the primary use includes the on-site dispensing of medication as a form of treatment. And here, the primary use is not the medication. The participants are receiving the medication, but the primary use and the bulk of their time is spent receiving education that will allow them to return to society without addiction. The medication is a very, very, very small part of that. It's a program that really seeks to educate these individuals so that they can engage in productive lifestyle. I will note I'm not going to go through all the cases that the courts that have come down in the courts over the years, but I will note that there are many, many cases, and I think I cited a few in my application, that have found that that programs which seek to provide life skills training classes or education relating to addiction, and things that are outside the scope of sort of a classic education, sit in a classroom with a whole bunch of people for 8 hours a day, constitutes an educational use. A couple of cases I'll just point out: the Fitchburg Housing Authority versus the Zoning Board of Appeals, which was from a long time ago now, over 40 years ago. In that case, the SJC, the Supreme Judicial Court, determined that the use of a facility was an educational purpose that must be allowed, as former institutionalized adults would be trained there in skills for independent living, such as self-care, cooking, job seeking, budgeting, etc. That case also made a very important statement, which is as follows: inculcating a basic understanding of how to cope with everyday problems and to maintain oneself in society is incontestably an educational purpose, which the court found was the dominant purpose of the proposed facility. There are many other cases that have come down in recent years, including the recent case of McLean Hospital versus Town of Lincoln in 2019, which made it very clear that just because you're receiving a medication as part of the program doesn't transform the program automatically into being a medical program. That's just one facet of it. So, in other words, a program doesn't lose its primary educational purpose when particularly competencies taught may also be therapeutic or rehabilitative, etc. There are many other cases, and I won't go through them now, but I'll reference Regis College versus Town of Weston, Congregation of the Sisters of St. Joseph's of Boston, and many, many others, which have described educational uses as in a very general, broad way and comprehensive way. The word education is a very broadly defined term. I also want to note, as I insinuated earlier, that Spectrum has been deemed by courts over the last many years to be participating in an educational use for medication-assisted treatment programs, just like the one that it looks to open here.
I believe one of your initial letters to the city of Fitchburg cited a case in which you sued a city that denied the request for a permit and received a judgment of $100,000. That was in your initial communication to the city, correct?
Correct. And that was, I believe that was Pittsfield, which was also a non-residential program. And in that case, Spectrum was trying to establish a medication-assisted treatment program in that city. The court affirmed the Dover rights, and as a result, the city paid Spectrum $100,000 to resolve the ensuing litigation. I will also say that we've litigated in Lawrence in a 2015 case. That matter found that substance abuse treatment centers qualify as educational uses under the statute. In Framingham, in a 2001 case, Spectrum Health Systems versus Framingham Zoning Board of Appeals, the land court specifically ruled that a program operated by Spectrum providing drug treatment services is an educational use covered by the Dover Amendment. That was also an outpatient program like the medication-assisted treatment program at issue here. Other cases as well, a case in Weymouth which involved a residential facility. In that case, one of Spectrum's residential facilities, I should say. In that case, injunctive relief was granted, and it was ordered for the defendants to immediately allow Spectrum to renovate the property and operate the program therein and refrain from obstructing its use. Pittsfield, which I just mentioned, and finally Haverhill, which was also a non-residential facility. In the Haverhill matter, the parties reached agreement on Spectrum's operation of a drug treatment program, where after a hearing, the court recognized that Spectrum was likely to succeed on the merits. So I will say that there have been many matters that have been litigated in court, settled outside of court, et cetera, involving both medication-assisted treatment programs, just like the one Spectrum's looking to operate here, as well as residential programs where courts have found that this use squarely falls within the Dover Amendment, and that just because there is some medication involved or prescribing of medications is not an analysis by any stretch. That's just a part of the equation, and that the educational use and trying to educate and provide classes and skills to individuals to cope with their past addiction outweigh any medical use. And I would sort of, in closing, I would just say here, it's very clear that the Dover Amendment applies and that this use, like the other cases that I mentioned, is primarily educational in nature and it warrants coverage as an exempt use educational under the Fitchburg zoning bylaws. This is not a medical use. The 2 minutes dispensing of medication doesn't take it over the threshold to allow it to be a medical use, and therefore a special permit and a site plan review should not be required in this instance, and the building commissioner's decision should be reversed.
I'm going to pause and ask you 2 questions. Do you still contest that a site plan review is not required, whether or not you are considered an exempt use?
There's 7 areas that Dover prescribes that can be reasonably regulated, and I believe that the only one that really would be applicable here is parking. So I agree.
I think that's for the planning board to determine, don't you?
The planning board can regulate the 7 areas of reasonable regulation established by Dover. So I do think that you can do a limited site plan review so long as it focuses strictly on the areas of permissible restriction under Dover. So that's correct.
And then I'm going to go through the cases that you cited that Spectrum was involved in, asking a question, which is what court made the decision.
Okay, sure.
So in the Pittsfield case, which court?
Give me 1 second. So the Pittsfield case would have been, I need to actually look. I need to look. I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm not sure if that was Superior Court or Federal Court, but I can certainly look.
Okay. Would you like to provide me with a list the next time I come back to you, which is going to be after public comment?
Sure. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. Anything else before we move to public comment?
Nothing further unless you have any further questions.
Okay. I think I'm going to hold board member questions until after public comment. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you. All right. So we are now going to go to public comment. And the first thing that I would like to do is just take a poll. And I think that's a good way to start, by allowing people to express what they came here to say. And I do see that our building commissioner has his hand up. So let me go to him first. Go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to make a point of clarification about this. The original form of intent, which was submitted for this and which is under appeal currently, FI 23-262, the scope narrative of that form of intent was to retrofit an existing retail space for use as medical assisted therapy clinic. And made no mention whatsoever of educational use or anything to that effect. It just said retrofit existing retail space for use as a medical assisted therapy clinic.
Okay.
So that is what the zoning determination which is under appeal was based upon. So just for a point of clarification on that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I appreciate that. All right. Now we are going to go to public comment. And again, as a means of expression, if you are here to oppose this petition, I'm going to ask everybody to please silence your phones again. If you are here to make a statement against this petition, please raise your hand. Okay. And if you are here to make a statement in support of this petition, please raise your hand. Okay. So not knowing how much of that was visible, let the record reflect that a majority of the persons present raised their hands in opposition. I did not see any hands raised in support. Okay. All right. I would like to start with public comment now. I'm going to go to in-person. Ms. Wetcha has stood up already in preparation for her public comment. So let's start with you. And what I'm going to do, can you raise your hand if you intend to speak tonight? Okay. I think I said it. could you raise your hand if you intend to speak tonight? Thank you. All right. Given that number of people, I'm going to set the timer at 2 minutes. I'm sure you're aware of how it works. Ms. Wheatshare, you're welcome to start.
Jacqueline Wetchey, Fitchburg resident. Spectrum is claiming the right to locate in Park Hill Plaza because they are an educational institution. I checked the site of the accrediting body, New England Association of Schools and Colleges. They are not listed. I then checked the National Association of Independent Schools directory. They are not listed. Next, I checked the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education schools pages. I found no active listings. Spectrum isn't listed any of these places because it's not a school. According to their own website, Spectrum is a health system. They are accredited by the Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities. Spectrum is misrepresenting itself and in their appeal documents is also trying to bully the city into accepting this clinic by writing about how they sued Pittsfield and other communities. They don't live in Fitchburg, and they don't care what city residents want. We already have a methadone clinic. Why don't they put this somewhere else? Because they don't want it in their backyard. They want it in ours. When you touch someone without their consent, it's an assault. This is the property equivalent, an assault on our community. History shows us that the appeasement of bullies is poor public policy. While Spectrum isn't an educational facility, there is a legitimate school we should be considering in these discussions, Memorial Middle School. It's a real school, and I know because my child attended there. This proposed clinic is too close to that school. Please vote no on this appeal.
So I appreciate the public interest very much, but I will note that by clapping, you just reduced the amount of time that Ms. Wheatshare had to speak. So keep that in mind when you're doing what you're doing.
Hi there, Amy Green, City of Fitchburg, also a Fitchburg City Councilor. I would like to know specifically what demographics data that you pulled from the clientele that you plan on assisting at Park Hill Plaza, that our 7 already facilities in Fitchburg are not meeting the needs of the patients that you plan on serving. And the fact that your own statement said that the people from Leominster now have to be transported to Worcester, I find that hard to believe, with, again, Fitchburg offering 7 facilities that offer treatment. Comprehensive Treatment Center on Airport Road, Luck on Day Street, Counseling and Assessment Clinic on Summer Street and Electric Ave, Community Health Link on Nichols Road, Luck on Westminster Street, and Health Alliance Rehab. Spectrum at 40 Spruce Street in Leominster, your hours of operation were Monday through Sunday, with dispensing between Monday and Saturday from 5:30 a.m. to 12 noon. I find it ironic that Mayor Mazzarella, and as great as he is, can't find you a space in Leominster. And I do have to mention that if you indeed wanted to be community partners with us here in Fitchburg, what you should have done was implement community engagement, better implementation with transparency and trust, careful planning and preparation, inclusion and demographic diversity, collaboration and shared purpose. The fact that you didn't even go to any of our 7 other facilities that offer same like-minded treatment is disrespectful. And I find it interesting that if you your dispensing time only takes 2 minutes, how much education is actually being offered. And I'd like to also know, through the other 14 facilities that you operate in Massachusetts, what is your rate of doping while dosing?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Green. At this point in time, I am going to go to an online participant. Councillor Di Natale, you're welcome. I'm going to start the 2-minute clock. Councillor Di Natale? All right, I am going to come back to Councillor Di Natale. Can we have another in-person participant who would like to speak? Welcome, sir. Please give us your name before you start.
Brian Ruffiange, resident of Fitchburg, Mass.
Thank you.
My concern here is that there are several schools in the area, Memorial for one, and there's also Rheingold School right down the street, which isn't that far. We also have the ball field that the kids play there, football. We also have driving school, a karate school that is right in that same development where they're looking at, where to me is very unsafe for the children. Property values will most likely decline in our area, which is not a good thing. The clinic should be looking close. The clinic shouldn't be located too close to residential settings. Why does Fitchburg have to have more house? Why does Fitchburg have to house more than one clinic? Which I just found out we have more, which I didn't know. So we really don't need another one. Hang on, I'm going through my notes. I don't get on that road. From one to the point, Leominster couldn't find them a spot, so now they're going to other places. I just feel we are trying to clean up the city. This is not cleaning up the city. We already have 7. Why do we need another one? I'm done.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, go ahead, ma'am. Please let us.
I can't hear you. I'm hearing impaired.
Let us know your name.
My name's Laurie Grover. I live in Fitchburg, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
I have several concerns. I was a registered nurse, and I worked in the Department of Mental Health for 4 decades. I worked in substance abuse. I'm concerned about, number one, the recidivism of addicted individuals is extremely high. Okay, that leads a concern about either them, if they don't take their medication on the facility, and if they take it home, whether it's going to be sold, if it's going to be sold in the community. And my second concern is people who take drugs and alcohol, who have addictive issues, also make poor choices. And I'm concerned about the addicted individuals making poor choices so close to a middle school, okay, that my daughter attended, okay? Now, my daughter is out of school, but she's coming to the age where she's going to have children, you know, and I don't want my grandchildren exposed to that kind of potential detriment, okay? As I said, I'm a nurse with 4 decades of experience in mental health and substance abuse. You know, I've seen it. This medication is so dangerous that we had to melt it in graduated medicine cups, make sure they took it in front of us, and then take 8 ounces of fluids afterwards to make sure they didn't cheek their medicine. Okay, I'm trying to convey the lethality and the strength of the medication you're talking about right here, and I just don't think it's a good choice in that kind of an environment, in that kind of, you know, risk to children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. All right, sir, you're welcome. Please start with your name.
Hi, I'm Jason Andrews. I'm a resident of Fitchburg. I'm also president of the youth football and cheer in Fitchburg, and we have just doubled our enrollment in that field directly behind where they propose to put their treatment facility. I think that's extremely dangerous. I think it's a poor taste of them to name the lawsuits that they brought against towns. I noticed they didn't bring it against Somerville or Cambridge or Natick or any of these wealthy towns. They want to come pick on us, and I think I have a huge problem with that, specifically since I teach kids every day. I teach them how to play football. My coaches teach them how to cheer. They teach them how to be good community people. I don't think they're teaching these people in the right environment to get them back to a productive position in society. It's too close to our children. And my children range in age from 4 years old to 13 years old. And I just think that's just, the proximity is too close. I am a resident very close by, close to the abutment area that you guys named, and I'm a little bit worried about my property values. I've spent more than $150,000 on my house to improve it. I was stood before this board a few months ago to get a porch put on my property. I think it's just insensitive of this organization who's coming here to make money. Make no mistake about it. That's what they're coming to do. And I don't think they need to bring it to our town. I think we have enough of it already.
Okay.
That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Before we go to the next in-person, nope. Councillor Di Natale has disappeared off online. Go ahead, ma'am. Please state your name.
My name is Tasha. I am a resident of Fitchburg. I live near Park Hill Plaza and patronize several businesses there as well. As a resident and a parent, I firmly oppose placing a methadone clinic in Park Hill Plaza. There are many reasons why Park Hill Plaza is not an appropriate place for this facility. For starters, this plaza has many family-oriented businesses. If this facility were to be placed there, we would undoubtedly see an increase in loitering and soliciting. Many residents will feel uncomfortable and unsafe visiting the surrounding stores, and as a result, these businesses will suffer. Another concern is the anticipated influx in traffic, which will increase the potential for pedestrian and vehicular-related accidents. Most importantly of all, the placement of this facility will be within a short walking distance from Memorial Middle School and a youth football field. This puts the public, especially children who walk to and from school and frequent the plaza, at risk for being exposed to and potentially harmed by used needles, as well as clientele from this facility who may be drunk, high, or have ill intentions. In closing, there are no good reasons for this facility to be placed in Park Hill Plaza, and we strongly urge you to put the safety and concerns of the surrounding community above all else when making your decision today. Thank you.
Councillor Cragen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sally Cragen. I live at 1138 Oak Hill Road. In Fitchburg, I am a Fitchburg City Councilor at large, and I too oppose this petition. I appreciate what Tasha said about the family-oriented businesses. I have spoken to businesses up there. They are not looking forward to sharing their neighborhood with this particular entity. I agree that I'm very surprised that the city of Leominster was not able to find an appropriate venue, given the number of malls, given the number of vacant storefronts, given the amount of business spaces there are that are not near residences, and especially not near middle schools. There is a jiu-jitsu studio up there, and until last fall, there was also Little Stars Dance Academy. Before then, there was a really wonderful gymnasium for parents and children. Who is to say that some of those vacant spots will not be looked at favorably by someone wanting to bring child-oriented business back? That's kind of been the tradition at that place. I am a huge fan of recovery. I think anyone who wants recovery absolutely should be helped on that journey, but not at Park Hill Plaza, and not within walking distance of a youth football field, a middle school, and residences. So please oppose this. You are such great people. You are so smart. I have learned so much going to ZBA, and I really hope that you can look at this application and see what it's going to cost us, because it's going to cost us a lot.
Ma'am, please give us your name, and then you can go ahead.
Hello, my name is Janie Andrews, and I live in the city of Fitchburg, very close to Park Hill. Currently, my son is inpatient. He took cocaine. Yes, he's 20 years old. So I am close, and I understand the need for these type of facilities, because my son will have to participate. But even speaking to him, he does not believe that that is the right location, and to be bullied and said that is educational. What is that? How are you getting paid for this? Are you being reimbursed by medical insurance? Or are they paying out of pocket? Or are you doing this, out of Spectrum's cash flow? So to be used as educational and be sneaking in there like that, I think it's wrong. I work with many people who do substances who are trying to recover. Like I said, I understand the need. Many of those people have children, and they too, I have spoken. Like, that is just too close to our children. I'm scared for my children. I know what, like I said, my son is in recovery, but I'm afraid for my child to walk there now. My 2 kids are right here. It's in the wrong place. So, yes, you provide educational services. I open my business and it's free. I provide educational services to people. And I go to them and teach them. So I understand how you're trying to say that it's broad. Yes, it is broad. But I can't get reimbursed by medical insurance for it. And I believe Spectrum does get reimbursed by medical insurance for these services. Thank you.
Thank you, Min. You're welcome, sir. Please start off with your name, and then you're welcome to speak.
Hi, good evening. My name is Shelton Dobson. I'm a resident of Fitchburg in the Park Hill area also. I'd like to say, first of all, that I am a person in long-term recovery. And there was a word that came up this evening when everybody opened up and it was talking about that word education. Ma'am, I've been clean and sober over 33 years. I started out in Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. I still go to meetings. I live in that area of Park Hill and I walk my dog. And if I had a penny for every needle that I picked up over in that area and nip bottle in the last few years, I wouldn't be standing here in Fitchburg. But just to say, that is something that should be looked at very thoroughly, not just for the financial aspect of things, but for the education. This woman talked about these 2 kids right here. I'm a parent with 4 kids. I have 11 grandkids, and none of my 11 grandkids ever see me under the influence of anything. And I just want to share something with you all, respecting, because I know you all know this automatically. You cannot treat a drug with a drug. I don't care how you look at it. There is no way of doing it. What you're doing is you're making sure that dollar sign is keep rolling in your pocket. You're making sure that somebody is getting paid, and that somebody is getting paid is not sitting at this table. You're sitting here because they want you to be here. They're paying you to be here. And you know, one of the most important things you have to understand is each one teach one. If these kids are walking by these parks, and my kids are associated in the Pop Warner fields and everything over the years, and my grandkids have done it too. And I mean, this is something that we need to really take a look at. I oppose this 110%. And if anybody needs to speak to me after the meeting, I'm more than open to speak to you and share with you. And I'm 66 years old, and I still go to recovery meetings. And every morning before I get up, you know what I do? I text 65 people in recovery, and I give them a word of the day. Thank you. That's all I got to say.
Sir, congratulations on maintaining your recovery and your sobriety. Your name, please.
My name's Lisa McMaster. I'm from Fitchburg, and I'm writing and please asking you folks not to vote for this. The reasoning being is I have empathy for all these people. I can't say that I've had any close contact with it, but I understand it's out there. It's a problem. It's a growing problem. It's also a very big money problem that people are getting money from. But my question is there are spaces in Leominster. There's a space right over Brady's, which used to be Cuteeks. That's available. That was right down the street from you. That was never looked into. There was other ones. There's plenty of spaces. What about the mall that has nothing in it? You need easy access to Route 2 and 190. Coming into the middle of Fitchburg to have people come there because it might be the bus line, that's kind of ridiculous. It doesn't sound like you want to put it in your city or your backyard, as others have said. And I really was offended by the lawyer telling us all the lawsuits they had and how they won it, how it came about. It's not about a lawsuit. It's about being moral and decent and pretty much saying we don't want it in our city. And we are tired of people dumping in Fitchburg. Thank you.
Before we go to the next in-person comment, I'm going to go online. Councillor Di Natale, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, sir. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. It's clear to me that the Dover Amendment has been widely abused by these agencies because, as these court cases have also stated,
Marcus, could you pause? Marcus, could you pause for a moment? I'm going to stop this and restart. Dan, are you able to increase the volume? It's been consistently low for our remote. That is what I'm looking for. Thank you. Okay. Councilor Di Natale, please restart.
Thank you. It's clear to me that the Dover Amendment is being abused by these agencies because the Dover Amendment is very, very vague. There is no specificity of what an educational use is. So what these organizations are doing is they're hiding behind it. And they're threatening communities, as you just heard earlier, that if you don't approve this, we're going to sue you. Boy, that's a willing partner that you want to have in your city, isn't it? Let's be honest, folks. The patients going to this organization are not going there to learn. They're going there to get weaned off of these drugs, and that is the use of methadone. And in order to get that methadone, they have to attend these courses. If they don't attend these courses, they don't get the methadone. And obviously, to get off heroin, you need the methadone. So who's kidding here? This is not an educational facility. If you go on their website, as I'm reading it right now, every word you read is medical, medical, medical. It doesn't say anything about education. It has a 20-page flyer that you can download on a PDF about all of the drugs that they deal with in order to wean people off of substance abuse. So it's not an educational facility. It's a medical facility. And medical insurance companies are paying for this. But they're hiding behind this Dover Amendment and threatening the city of Fitchburg that if we don't pass this, they will sue us. And I will say this, Mayor Mazzarella has a lot of power in Leominster. If he wanted this place staying in his city, he would have found a way. Instead, more than going on for, push them onto us, which has already become the social service center of Worcester County. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Please give us your name, ma'am, and then you're welcome to speak.
Jean Robbie, I live in Fitchburg. Over 40 years, drug-free. I went through a program where I spent a year where they trained me to go out and find a job. They trained me to get off drugs. They taught me more than this place could ever teach you. First of all, they're going to give methadone or Suboxone. Both of them cause so severe problems. They rot their teeth, it rots their legs, their bodies get these sores on them. You have no idea what this stuff does. They cannot just get off of it. They have to be weaned. The people who regulate how much they get of these drugs are the patients themselves. I know this because my niece, God rest her soul, and did they care that she died? No. My niece went through the program, and if her mother wasn't standing right there next to her, they did whatever she said. She kept raising the dose and raising the dose and raising the dose, and they say they put a cap on it like 40 milligrams. Not true. She was up to 100 milligrams by the time she deceased. They don't regulate anything. It's all about the money. You're looking at the money, what, 70 a day? Just for the drug alone is over $700 for that day. That doesn't include the people who work there or any of the other stuff that goes on there that they have to do. That's just that. It's just a new addiction to keep the money coming in to Big Pharma. If you look at where all their places are, a lot of them are close to schools or close to places where children are. I got a notification from the school now, just recently. They want the kids to tell them who all's on drugs and who all's doing alcohol.
I am sorry,
they're on their 20-plus years they're taking these drugs.
Thank you, ma'am. I am going to say that as of right now, I do want to limit further public comment to about 20 minutes. So please keep your statements concise. Is anyone else present in person who would like to speak. You, ma'am, in the back. Okay. Are you going to translate as you go along?
Yeah, we're together.
Okay.
My name is Melissa Gonzalez.
Mi nombre es Luz Kelly Quintero.
I'm going to allow you 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. We are actually located at 485 Electric Ave. We have a salon there, a small family salon. The majority of our clientele are women and small children. Our shop doesn't really have a schedule. We open based on our services. We have weddings that can start early at 4 o'clock in the morning. I personally, I'm speaking personally on this situation. I enter that salon by myself at 4 o'clock in the morning. This facility is saying that they start their services at 5:30. I understand that there's a necessity. We have an increase of users and we need to do something about it. However, the logistics of the location was not fully thought through. People have mentioned about schools. Our clientele is being affected. We didn't know about this until someone came by with a flyer saying, did you know that they're opening this clinic two stores next to us? 2 doors next to us. The line is going to go in front of our door. We're that close to that corner. We have clients who has buried their family members from that same addiction right next door. Me personally, it breaks my heart I don't want them to see this. I don't want to see the trauma. I don't want to be part of that trauma. My parents took me out of the city to get away from that and to provide a better lifestyle and not to be exposed to these elements that can potentially traumatize a child, and it comes up as an adult, which potentially can lead them down to this path. We don't want this. Our clients are already saying, what are you going to do about it? We don't want to come here. We don't want this. It's affecting our business. And my question is what does Fitchburg want? Fitchburg, I've been here forever, over 30 years, and I love this city. But I don't like the representation this is the clients that we're bringing in. These are the people that we're bringing into our city. Opening more of these clinics are bringing people from Worcester, from other areas in here with those habits. So now we're being recognized as a dirty city, as a drug city. We, as small businesses, we're trying to change that. I'm a resident here. I own property here, and it's a small business. This is the money that we want, but I understand why people are jumping on these things because it's state funded. State money can't compete with small businesses. It's all family.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Anyone else who would like to speak today? Sir, you're welcome up. Mr. McNamara, you're welcome up.
Good evening, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Paul McNamara. I actually am a resident of the city of Fitchburg, and I have a vested interest in 2 businesses within the plaza. I'm here tonight to speak on ZBA 24-2, the proposed location of a medical educational business within Park Hill Plaza, identified by city records as 72 to 80 Franklin Road. For those that do not know my background, it's basically in traffic safety. In the past, I've been fortunate to be qualified as an expert in collision analysis and crash reconstruction by the Massachusetts Trial Court, both Superior and District, criminal and civil, bench and jury sessions. I've been further recognized by the International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement Standards and Training as a subject matter expert in traffic safety. My career in traffic safety has allowed me to be certified as an instructor in various traffic safety curricula for the Massachusetts Police Training Committee, as well as nationally certified as an instructor in the Safe Routes to School program. Currently, I serve in the Massachusetts, New England, and National Driver Education Association Boards of Directors. Having had an opportunity in the past to observe the daily operations of a similar facility as that is proposed in Fitchburg, the facility is on Spruce Street in Leominster, and another one on Airport Road in Fitchburg. Pedestrian, motor vehicle, and bicycle traffic was witnessed as the modes of transportation for patrons utilizing the services of the businesses similar to that proposed for the plaza. The proposed location of the business within Park Hill Plaza creates potential safety concerns for the patrons of not only the proposed business, but the pedestrians and motorists utilizing the services of current and future plaza occupants. Currently, no public sidewalks exist on Franklin Road or Rollstone Road on the plaza side of the roadway. There are no public crosswalks from Park Hill Plaza crossing the public roadway to allow safe passage for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other vulnerable roadway users. The posted speed on Franklin Road is 30 miles per hour in the area of the plaza. Information published in the July 2023 revised edition of the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles Driver Education Manual, page 64 to be exact, provides educational information indicating that a vulnerable road user struck by a vehicle traveling at 30 miles per hour would have a 40% chance of death or serious bodily injury.
I apologize. I need to ask you to conclude because
Sure.
I have time.
Sure. My concern for the patrons of the proposed business that they'll be placed in harm's way. And I would suggest that a stipulation of any business of that nature being placed in the plaza, that stipulations be adhered to. One would be for the operation of the proposed business that a traffic safety plan in conformance with the Manual and Uniform Traffic Safety Devices, the most current edition, be prepared by a certified traffic safety engineer to include roadway and above-grade safety traffic devices for the plaza and the adjacent area. The creation of sidewalks around the plaza portion for the safety of pedestrians with crosswalks and pedestrian hybrid beacons to enhance the safety in accordance with the Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices and the Massachusetts Addendum to the MUTCD. Right. I also would suggest that a stipulation, if you do approve this, is for the traffic pattern in the plaza to be laid out in accordance with the MUTCD to include a certified traffic safety engineer to prepare a parking plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to remind the public we have a 2-minute limit. I did allow Mr. McNamara to go over that. I know when he started his presentation, he had obviously prepared some lengthy and detailed remarks, which I do appreciate. And I'm just going to remind him that he's welcome to submit those in writing to the board. Okay. All right. I'm going to just ask if there's anybody online who would wish to make a comment. Please raise your hand. Seeing none, is there any other person present? Sir, you're welcome. Please state your name, and then you may speak.
Hi, my name is Mike Burch, and I'm a resident of Fitchburg. I'm going to say to the point, as the commissioner came on earlier and said that there was no, what they put on their application versus what they said, it's two very different things. And I have to, really think about the lawyer coming out with the bully tactics in the club. Well, we didn't get that memo. And I think that it's wrong to do that. They're threatening us because we want to live a decent life. We want to have something good and not, the days of the dirty burg should be gone. Very simply. The other fact is how can you trust somebody that says, oh, between 78 and 80 or whatever the number was, and it's 481, but they don't know. But I can tell you one thing, they know if there was a penny missing out of their paycheck. So I think their comments were disingenuous at best. The traffic pattern there will be unbelievable. How many cars will be rolling there for 2 hours? Who's going to regulate? In Massachusetts, there's a 5-minute idle law. Who's going to manage that? You're going to have a cop sitting there and ticketing them all the time, and you should. If they force this petition, we have the right to live the way we want in our city. Not be unreasonable, and it's not about addiction, but they're disingenuous. I mean, they're treating drugs. I mean, you're telling me they don't have Narcan there? You're telling me that they don't have a defibrillator there in case somebody ODs or something else or another medical crisis? That's primarily a medical facility with a small education on them. And the only reason education is there is so they can get reimbursed by the government. So the fact that they can sit here and lie to us and think we're a bunch of dopes is unbelievable to me. Marcus DiNatale hit the nail right on the head. We're sick of being a dumping ground. Thank you.
All right. If we stick to our 20 minutes, we have about 10 more minutes for comment. Ma'am, would you like to speak? Please state your name and go ahead.
Laura O'Kane. I'm a Fitchburg resident, and I also manage 2 of the commercial properties, Park Hill Realty and Franklin Electric properties. And I just want to say that this is a very inappropriate use in a neighborhood shopping center. We've invested heavily in our properties, and to see this type of use come in it's disrespectful. This is a neighborhood center. And I will reiterate that the mention of the lawsuits, that does not make a good neighbor. And we try very hard to work with our neighboring property owners. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, you're welcome to speak. Please tell us your name.
My name is Robin Perla, and I actually live right at the corner by the football field behind the plaza. I've been there for 31 years. I'm in front of Memorial Middle School, and although I sympathize with families struggling with addiction, I myself firsthand have brought a family member to the methadone clinic on Airport Road for 2 months one summer while she was being educated or treated. That was approximately 8 years ago. She had a child whose intestines were all outside of his body when he was born due to the treatments. He survived till age 3. As I said, 8 or 10 years of this education treatment. She still is on treatments, and it's not educating at all. But having that experience, I saw the foot traffic that Airport Road has, and I see the traffic, the children who walk by my house every day, thousands. It's not fair to them or the community, the businesses at the plaza, to have this clinic. And I had to speak out against it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any other person present here who wishes to speak? Sir, you're welcome. Please give us your name.
Hi. My name is Bruce Cody. I am a resident here in Fitchburg. I guess I'm confused. When I first came here and the meeting was just started, this lady here made the statement that the reason why the board didn't understand what was going on was because their idea of that place is an educational one and not a treatment center. And then we listened to 10 minutes of her dissertation, and all I heard in there was that they're going to be distributing methadone or drugs or whatever it is. So to me, this is an educational, it is a treatment center. You can call it treatment and educational, but it's not just an educational center. This is a treatment center, and to believe anything else is wrong. Now, Leominster found a way to get out of this. They don't want you, neither do we. And for them to have another damn methadone clinic, we don't need it, okay? It's plain and simple, we don't need it. So then, during her dissertation, the other thing that bothered me, during the dissertation, she brings up these legal issues of what this town had a problem with it, that town, and I saw that as a veiled threat. I don't know if any of you did, because to me that was a veiled threat, and I don't like it. So guess what? Take your business somewhere else.
Any other person present who would like to make a statement? Ma'am, you're welcome. Please give us your name.
Yes, hi. My name is Lori Barrows, and I've lived in Fitchburg my whole entire life, and it's been really good to me in the school systems, and I've owned a business for 30 years in different locations. And Park Hill Plaza is very flourishing. It wasn't like that years ago. I lived on Rollstone for years, and it was dead as a doornail. We're flourishing. We need to keep it that way. We also have a child's behavioral health right across the plaza. I'm pretty sure it's right near Park Hill Pizza. I just feel blessed to be there, and I'm very devastated. I definitely don't want it. In the summer months, we already have issues with drug use in the parking lot. We see it on a daily basis in the summer, and I don't want to see it, and I don't want to add to it. And we have too many children traveling by foot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, please give us your name, and you're welcome to speak.
My name is Heather Root, and I live in Fitchburg. I just have kind of a clarifying question. They said they're not for profit, but the Dover Amendment is for nonprofit. Those are two completely different organizations run differently, so I don't understand how they're getting in under that.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have any other person here who would like to make a statement? Sir, you're welcome. Please give us your name.
My name is David Lantry. I'm a 40-year resident of Fitchburg and an abutter to the plaza. Just a couple of notes right here. We're talking about 200 to 250 patients weekly. That was what was stated today. It's 70 a day. My whole issue now is overwhelmment. We've got a plaza, a very thriving plaza. We're talking about bringing 70 people a day or 250 patients a day. We're going to overwhelm the system traffic-wise and foot traffic on top of that. The primary use of dispensing medication is under this, they are a medical dispensement facility. If you eliminate their dispensement of medication, then they become an abstinence-based program. And unfortunately, with opioid addiction, abstinence-based addiction programs are about 99% ineffective. So let's call it like it is. You have to be passing out drugs daily to these people to be effective. And we're talking about a lot of folks coming down here, overwhelming the plaza, that which, as many people have attested to, it's on the rebound, and we'd like to keep it that way. Thank you.
Is there any other person present who would like to make a statement? Okay. Is there any other person online who would like to make a statement? All right, I am going to read into the record. I have to switch my glasses. Emails that we have received. The first one is from Carrie Harris. Dear Ms. Mata, I had intended to be at tonight's meeting concerning the methadone clinic, but was called away and will be unable to attend. I would still like my voice to be heard. Can you please add my message? I am a resident of Fitchburg in Ward 1. I am writing to encourage the board to vote no on the methadone clinic. They may try to convince you that they are not a methadone clinic, but we all know what it is. As a medical person, I am not against treatment for addicts at all. Park Hill Plaza is just not the right spot for this. Numerous family businesses are located there and a school right down the street. That is not even including the increase in traffic this will cause, making it a nightmare for people trying to get to work. I am sure this company can find a better suited place to operate away from a residential area, family plaza, and middle school. So out of respect to the longtime business owners in the plaza and residents who live nearby, I am asking you members of the board to please vote no and deny this appeal. The next message is from, I apologize if I mispronounce this, Barbara Vosberg of 309 Teresa Street. Methadone is an opioid. Many use it until they can get the money for their next fix of heroin. Where do you think they might get that money? Robbing people who shop Park Hill Plaza, breaking into homes in a peaceful residential neighborhood. Stealing birthday gift money from children going to get candy? No, we don't want it in our peaceful neighborhood. I can't imagine anyone in wards 2 and 3 wanting it here. Put it somewhere that doesn't propose the risks of having it in Park Hill. It is also proven nationwide that auto accidents increase a lot near meth clinics. All towns will go to the clinic, not just Fitchburg. Please turn this down. And then I believe that is a repeat of an email forwarded to me by the building commissioner, but I'm just going to check. Was it? Okay, good. All right. So that was a very robust public participation session, and I am glad again to see so many people participating in their government. We are going to bring the public comment portion of the meeting to a close, and I've been trying to note down some of the questions that had been asked that are questions for the applicant. The first question I had asked about which courts on the decisions.
Do you mind if I sit, or would you like me to go to the podium?
You may sit.
Okay.
You may sit. As long as you're
I'm
close
happy to
enough
do
we can
whatever you
hear.
prefer. I'm fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So the Lawrence matter was in Lawrence Superior Court.
Mm-hmm.
The Framingham matter was in Massachusetts Land Court. The Weymouth matter was in Massachusetts Federal District Court. The Pittsfield matter was in Massachusetts Federal Court.
At the district level?
Yeah, at the district level. And the Haverhill matter was in Suffolk Superior Court.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
All right. So as I noted them down, these are the questions that I heard from our members of the public. Do you have any educational accreditation or certification?
I'm not, so.
I am asking the question from the public.
That's
You may
fine.
answer
So,
as you see
so
fit.
as I mentioned earlier, Spectrum is not a traditional educational organization like a school. However, they are an educational organization as referenced in the Dover Amendment and as further delineated by Massachusetts case law. So we stand firm in our position that Spectrum is an educational organization. They're not accredited by the school system or all the other entities that were identified. I'm not aware of that. However, that doesn't disqualify them from qualifying as an educational organization under the Dover Amendment.
Okay. So would it be fair to summarize that answer as accreditation is not required, but you don't have accreditation from an educational entity?
That is correct.
Okay. What are your sources of payment for the services you render?
Do you know the answer?
It's state funds and insurance. State funds and insurance.
Is it solely DPH, or is there another state entity that renders payment?
Insurance companies, DPH, and self-pay.
Thank you. We had a question about what measures were taken to monitor and regulate the administration of medication. What is the procedure?
The procedure, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
We had a question about what measures were taken to monitor and regulate medication for your patients, for your participants.
So who prescribes it and who monitors the levels of medication?
Well, I think that's an all-around question, and I would say who prescribes, who monitors whether it's taken or not and its effectiveness, and who authorizes increases or decreases in levels.
Sure. So a physician or a medical provider, being a mid-level or a physician, is who we staff to monitor the dosing. And they're the ones that make the final decision. As far as the security of the medication, which I think you asked, we have a DEA certificate, and they monitor the supply of the medication, and they often come in and they do audits that are unannounced.
Would you like to provide any clarification on the question asked about not-for-profit versus nonprofit?
They're the same thing.
Okay. And you're basing that on a state statute?
A nonprofit and a not-for-profit are the same. It has the same meaning. They're the same thing. Spectrum is a nonprofit, not-for-profit organization. It's a charitable organization, and that is one of the several reasons why it qualifies for protection under the Dover Amendment.
501c3 status?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And then the building commissioner indicated that the original form of intent that was submitted referenced only a medication treatment facility. And it would take me a moment to go back and dig that out. But would you like to address the difference between your form of intent and the subject matter of the appeal?
Sure. So the facility that the program that we seek to operate is a medication-assisted treatment center. Just because it has the word medication in it doesn't mean that it is not primarily educational in nature, which as a factual matter and a legal matter it is.
Okay. We do have that definition within our ordinance, though, correct? Medication-assisted treatment center?
Your ordinance, I don't believe, defines medication-assisted treatment center. I believe it defines medical clinic.
Let us all go back to our definitions so we can look at that issue.
So you have a medical treatment center / facility / clinic, which definition requires that the primary use includes the on-site dispensing of medication as a form of treatment as the primary use. So our position here is it's just not the primary use.
Similar, but not the exact wording of the word that is in the ordinance. Okay. At this point in time, I am going to, I have some questions that I'd like to spend a little time listing. I am going to turn to our board members and see if they have any questions or comments for the petitioner.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Reynolds, any questions? Thank you, sir.
It's always fun going first. Of course. A lot of what I heard tonight in terms of public comment, is concern. And I imagine with having multiple locations, this isn't the first time that you've heard concern. Just as a general question, as you go and seek locations, and based off your experience and knowing that there would be a concern, and you're dealing with a subject that can be very, emotional for a lot of people, right? How do you respond to the opposition as you heard it tonight about location?
So there's oftentimes a false perception that people who are seeking treatment or seeking recovery services are criminals, or them being next door is going to cause some form of danger, or they're going to decrease property values. These are all arguments that we unfortunately hear frequently. But from our perspective, that's just not true. We're here, and I understand folks in the audience disagree, but we're actually here trying to provide a helpful service to help people who are in recovery, who are disabled individuals, to get better and be productive citizens and productive members of society. So unfortunately, I think many of these are stereotypes, which are simply not true. And when we're providing these services to our clientele, we're trying to help them get better, and they want to help themselves get better. And so concern about crime or property values, we just don't think it is based in reality, and is more based in stereotypes. And I understand that's not what folks want to hear, but we've been down this road before, and unfortunately that's true. You just, unfortunately, or strike that, you can't treat people who are disabled differently than people who are not disabled. And when we get into the business of saying this use can be here and this use can't be here, and the use that we're prohibiting is a use that's servicing disabled people who are in recovery trying to get better, that's when we encounter big problems. And, I will say, and I said this earlier, Spectrum is not a fly-by-night operation. They're not a business that's just coming in and doing this for the first time. They're a nonprofit organization. They're seeking to help people, and they have over 50 years of history trying to do this. And the folks that are at the table with me, Kristen and Frank, have also been doing this for a long time. The goal is to be a productive, helpful part of the community, not just to come in and take people's money and hope we decrease crime, but hope not, but we don't really care. We actually do really care. And I think that shows by the track track record. And I think if you talk to many of the communities that we're situated in, I think they are grateful for our services, and even many who perhaps weren't initially because of many of the same reactions. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Let's keep the background chatter down, please. It's just difficult to hear if we do that. Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. In your search, of course, the Leominster location, the demise of the property certainly wasn't planned, and a lot of other folks in Leominster were affected by the same weather event as you were. So appreciate the interest in trying to get operations up and going as soon as practical. Makes great sense, both for your clients, and from a business perspective. Just in terms of, and I know you mentioned that you're working with a broker, can you give us some sense, is this the only property that you're able to find? Is there lots of options? Why is this one the best one?
I mean, I'll let Frank answer if you want. I don't know all the details of the search, but in my experience, it's not. I don't know where else he looked, but we shouldn't be told sort of where we can and cannot operate. And I say that sort of in a gentle way because I understand that people disagree.
Well, I want you. I want you.
Again, I will prevent us from going forward until we have quiet.
I want you to understand that my question is asked with positive intent.
Okay. So I don't know the answer to that question because I wasn't the person on the ground talking to the brokers. I'm happy to have Mr. Height answer your question.
So I've been personally involved with locating several of these sites, including the Leominster site. And there's certain requirements to operate our business. We need an amount of parking. Our clients use public transportation quite often, so we like to be where we have parking for our staff and our clients. We need public transportation. We need a certain size. There's spaces that are too small. There's spaces that are too big. Frankly, we were surprised at how few spaces there were in Leominster. We looked at the malls. We looked at the Sears building. We looked at many properties in Leominster for multiple reasons, mainly about those things that I mentioned. The size, the parking, the transportation, they just weren't the right fit. This space here, being on an end cap and everything, it seemed to be a space that would work well for us.
Mm-hmm. Understood. So, and that's really what I was just trying to understand is sort of what's your thought process for the type of location that.
Madam Chair, can I say something? In response to the public comment?
Are you answering?
I thought we were done. Okay. Do you have further?
You do. But in deference to you, because I'm sure if you're like me, you might forget. So why don't you ask your question now, if I could have the courtesy of being able to pick it up? Thank you.
I just wanted to say something about the threats and the lawsuits. It's public record that the form of intent was signed by me. I've got a construction supervisor's license. I'm an executive at Spectrum. I filed that, and the building commissioner denied our application. So we are here appealing that. It is appropriate for us to provide you with background information, including prior case law. We did not come into Fitchburg threatening on day one. Our application was denied, and we're here appealing that. So I just want to address that to the neighbor, for the folks in back. I think that was improperly categorized.
It was a document submitted by you, I think you're subject to the materials you submit. Mr. Reynolds, do you have a question?
I do. I have just a couple more questions.
Okay, and then after that, I'm going to have the building commissioner, and I'm going to go to him after you.
Sure. Thank you. In terms of the clientele that would be in the program, how would you characterize sort of what stage of recovery are they typically in?
It varies. We have people in early recovery, and we have people in long-term recovery that continue to receive medication.
Sure. And in terms of, I assumed you would say medication in education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the different stages of recovery and, you know, the kind of like how a day works, you say you open up very early in the day. Is it all folks that are longer in recovery might come in later? Folks that are in early recovery might be a little bit more needy for the medication? Just, is there any, and this is an uneducated question that I'm asking, so I'm asking you to teach me how does that day work for you?
So primarily the 5:30 a.m. folks that come in work, and that's why we open so early, so we can make sure that we accommodate them. We also offer the educational classes as early as 6 a.m. so they can go to work after.
Thank you. And based off of your experience, are there any triggers for your clientele when they come in that you would say that this location either creates or doesn't?
I don't know. I don't understand your question. I'm sorry.
Folks in recovery, everyone's may have a trigger, right? They, you know, presumptively, folks, you know, other folks going into the other businesses, they're coming in, they're getting the services. There's no problem with behavior or concerns and so forth. So, would you characterize any part of the clientele coming in as having some risk of triggers? And if so, does this location help or not help with that type of concern?
Sure. So we provide educational groups that help the client to identify those triggers, and we also provide education on how they can deal with them and, you know, remain free of illicit substances.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Commissioner, you may go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Felix Emmel. I'm the acting building commissioner. I just wanted to make a point of clarification to something that was said by both council and by the other representative of the applicant in this, or the appellant in this. I did not deny the application. What the determination was that a special permit is required from the planning board, and site plan approval is required from the planning board in accordance with the information that was provided to me about the use. They didn't provide anything saying that they're medically assisted therapy, which is educational use. There was nothing written in that application or any of the written comments in the portal before that determination was made. The claims came after the fact, after the determination had been made, and accompanied by all of the documentation that's been referenced here. So I wanted to just make it clear that I did not deny their application. It is an allowed use by special permit from the planning board in a commercial district, which is regulated under the zoning ordinance. And just for a point of clarification also about myself personally, I, in addition to being the acting building commissioner, do possess both a master's degree in public health and a doctorate in public health. So I understand and am pretty well read on much of the literature on the effects of substance use treatment. And I'm very sympathetic, and I've advocated for substance use treatment in many communities. And I am very much an advocate for getting people treatment on this.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Comment appreciated. Ms. Boyle, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
I have a few things I'd like to say. Boy, we have gone far and wide from what we're here for. what we're here for is to find out whether or not these people need to get a special permit, like Felix just said. And now we're looking at where we're supposed to be putting this place. What, Mayor? Microphone. Oh, I'm sorry. They couldn't hear me? My God.
That's unusual.
I know. So you know, all the information that we received is great, but it's not what we're here for. We're not here to determine whether or not they can move into that place. We're here to see whether or not the building commissioner was wrong in saying that they need a special permit to move into that building. That's what we're here for. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I want to know. He was right when he said that we went far off tangent here.
Anything else, Mr. Burns?
I think that's about it.
Okay. Mr. Talbot, any questions or comments for the applicant?
As an educational facility, you refer to your clients as patients, not students.
We refer to them as clients.
Are they being treated?
They're being educated, and as part of the toolbox to recovery, medication and education is part of that.
You can offer the same services that Leominster did?
Yes.
So of those 5 services you guys list on your website, only one of those lists an educational purpose.
I guess I would just say in response to that you have to look at what sort of the overview of the services that are being provided. And if you look at the overview, all separate from what the website says, the services are primarily educational based on sort of the overview that I gave you earlier.
The broad overview.
Correct.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Mr. Gallagher, any questions or comments for the applicant?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. McLaughlin, any questions or comments for the applicant?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the paragraphs in the presentation that was provided to the board, it was with respect to reasonable accommodation or modification. Within that, there were several cases that you notated. Casa Marie versus Superior Court, and then Oxford House versus Town of Babylon. Were those cases heard in Massachusetts?
The Casa Marie case was a First Circuit case.
Excuse me?
The Casa Marie case was a First Circuit case, so it was heard in the Circuit Court of Appeals that Massachusetts is a part of. The First Circuit consists of...
Okay, what town is Babylon?
So Babylon is Eastern District of New York.
Okay, thank you.
So Babylon is an out-of-state case.
Okay. You know, we're here to look at educational versus medical. We heard some feedback on accreditation. With regards to how the business was conducted in Leominster, what were the classroom hours there?
So we begin at about 6 a.m. and then we offer classes until probably 7. But very minimal classes in the evening. Most of our classes are early morning. That's when our clients prefer to come in.
Okay, so maybe let me kind of back up a little bit. What were the hours of operation in Leominster?
5:30 a.m. till 7 p.m.
Okay, and so we have 5:30 to 7. What were the classroom hours specifically?
6 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay, so from 6 to 7 p.m. you had regularly scheduled classes?
Yes. Now,
Or was
not on every hour. So we'd offer one at 6, maybe there'd be one
okay,
at
so
9.
that's my question.
Yep.
Between 6, 5:30, and 7, if you could kind of take me through when were the classes? You had a curriculum, right?
I don't have the Leominster schedule in front of me, so I wouldn't be able to tell you the exact schedule in Leominster.
Okay. Classroom environment, you're going to teach me, educate me. Is there any testing required?
No.
Are the teachers certified? Are there any specific qualifications they need? What would it entail for you to hire me to be able to be a part of the program?
A master's level clinician.
Okay. And again, looking at how the business was conducted in Leominster, 5:30 to 7, what hours did you dispense medical treatment?
So our dispensing hours in Leominster, I believe, were 5:30 a.m. to noon.
Okay, and nothing between noon and 7?
No.
So what happened in the business during those hours? What did you offer?
Education.
Okay. So, but you're not sure of the schedule?
I just don't have that specific site schedule in front of me.
Okay. How many teachers were at the Leominster location at any given time or during the week?
I would need to double check that. I think 5 to 7.
Every day?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, during an 8-hour period?
Yes, some flex their schedule to come in the early hours to teach the classes, and then some would come in later.
Okay, so during any given day, there are 5 teachers that have master's degrees on site to assist the clients.
At the Leominster site, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm all set
All
for the
set.
moment.
Thank you, sir. Okay. All right, so I just have a few more questions for you. How are clients referred to you?
There's various pathways to treatment, but most of our clients are self-referred.
What percentage of your clients do not receive methadone, Suboxone, or some other medication?
In Leominster, none.
How many locations do you have which do not administer methadone, Suboxone, or some other medication?
Well, we offer inpatient services, and we have programs on the inpatient side that do not offer medication, but all of our outpatient facilities offer medication-assisted treatment and education.
What is the percentage of clients who are able to, through your efforts, stop using methadone, Suboxone, or some other medication within a 2-year period? I know I'm throwing out a random number. If you have any statistics that would be relevant to the question, that would be fine.
I really don't. I don't have statistics in front of me. I think that, again, there's different pathways to recovery. Some people receive medication and education for the short term, and they move on. And then there's also individuals that need to be receiving ongoing medication and education in order to sustain their recovery.
Can you tell me, to the extent that you know, the full list of medications or other medical devices that are planned to be kept on the location?
I don't think I can go through the list of all of that. No, I could probably get that for you, but medications would be methadone. And we, buprenorphine is given through a prescription, and also naloxone is given through a prescription.
Okay. Any medical devices such as emergency resuscitation equipment or other kind of emergency response equipment that you have at the, or plan to have at the location?
An AED machine.
And what would be the response if you had a client come in who was experiencing a medical emergency?
We would call emergency services, we'd call a code, the nurses would respond, and we'd do our best until emergency services arrived.
Okay. What is the minimum medical qualification of a professional at your facility? In other words, is there a physician present at all times or on call? Is there a nurse or a nurse practitioner present on all times or on call? Or is it the medical clinician level? And I'm sorry if I misstated that. What's the minimum qualification present at all times of operation?
So a physician is on site once a week, or a medical provider, I should say, because there's also mid-levels. So there's a medical provider, but there's a medical provider on call 24 hours a day.
Okay.
And then for nursing, it's licensed practical nurse and RNs.
Right. Are you willing to locate at this facility without being able to administer methadone, Suboxone, or some other medication?
What was your question?
Are you willing to locate at this facility without being able to administer methadone, Suboxone, or some other medication?
I think that's a critical part of the program.
Okay, thank you. Finally, one of the cases that you mentioned and is, of course, well known to the city is the Fitchburg Housing Authority case. I'm going to read you part of the case, and this is, if you want to reference in the future, it's at page 289. And the quote from the court, which is the Supreme Judicial Court, is this, discussing the Dover Amendment. Because the statutory purpose of preventing local discrimination against educational uses is only furthered if the intended use of the land is in fact educational, the term educational purposes should be construed to minimize the risk that the Dover Amendment protection will improperly be extended to situations where form has been elevated over substance. Would you like to make a response regarding your program to that
Sure.
SJC quote?
So I don't have I listened to you, but I don't have it in front of me. So in Spectrum's case, we're certainly not using the Dover Amendment in an improper way. In fact, Spectrum's use is specifically what the Dover Amendment was used to protect. So as I mentioned before, here we're trying to help those who are recovering addicts to return to a healthy lifestyle and to be educated and informed in such a way that enables them to do so. And as I mentioned earlier, the use of medication is a small part of that process. It is a part of that process, which we have readily acknowledged. But this is certainly not this is not derogating in any way or undermining Dover by allowing Spectrum to fall within the confines of the Dover Amendment. And the way that the Fitchburg Housing Authority case and the Town of Lincoln case and many other cases have interpreted this are consistent with our position that Spectrum's use squarely falls within the definition of education in the Dover Amendment, as has been interpreted by many, many cases in the Supreme Judicial Court, the Superior Court, the Appeals Court, federal courts. And so I would say here we're certainly not abusing the Dover Amendment in this use, and I think that's been confirmed by various judicial authorities and various courts.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, if no other board member has a question for the applicant, I'd like to ask if you have anything to say before we close.
Sure. So in closing, I think I've made many of my arguments, but it's our position that a special permit is not required for the use of this property, and this property is an exempt educational use. As I mentioned earlier as well, the educational purpose of Spectrum's use is primary here. As we indicated earlier, we have a whole list of classes that our clients attend in order to help them get better. Education is a critical component and primary component of the program. The dispensing of medication is just a small part of that. There's significant authority out there, including the Town of Lincoln case that I mentioned a moment ago, that makes it clear that just because you dispense medication or engage in a rehabilitative purpose doesn't mean that this takes a matter outside of the threshold of educational use. And I think, as the case law has evolved over the years, education really has, as a legal matter, taken on a much broader scope than it did many, many years ago. And I think that's something that can be misunderstood because we hear education and we all have our viewpoints of what that means. But, the reason why I mentioned all the case law wasn't to show off that I know cases or anything like that. It was more to explain that the way courts have interpreted this term does include the use that Spectrum's looking to use the property for, and it also just shows how expansive the use of education is. And I think we should all be guided by, what the law is at the end of the day. Spectrum would like to come in and be a valued member of the Fitchburg community and helping people to get better and be productive citizens in the community. And so, I would urge you to reverse the decision and determine that a special permit is not required because Spectrum's use of the property squarely falls within the educational use exempt provision of the zoning bylaws. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Council. Public comment is closed. I'm sorry. We allowed an hour and a half plus, so. Before we move on, I just want to acknowledge that it is very difficult for an applicant and counsel to come into a room where everyone has a different opinion than them. And I want to commend both the applicants and counsel for the professional presentation that was made and conduct today at this hearing. So. Attorney Costa, I am about to move to board deliberations, and my question for you is, could you provide the board with any guidance on the standard by which it should judge the case before it?
I certainly can, Madam Chair. So again, for the record, Adam Costa, City Solicitor. So obviously I've been present for the entirety of the proceeding tonight, so I've had an opportunity to hear both what the applicant and its counsel have said, as well as the various comments from residents and counselors and others in the community. What I would say first is I would advise you that there are certain things that, while they were stated tonight, and while I think that they warrant having been said and maybe even warrant your consideration in a very general sense, probably aren't particularly relevant to the task that's before you tonight. So you heard, for example, things said about what could have been, or maybe what still can be, in Leominster versus what is proposed in Fitchburg. What's before you tonight is not some proposal for what is or what could have been in Leominster. It's a proposal for this particular site in Fitchburg. So I don't think that's a proper consideration, and you'll hear in a moment what is a proper consideration, but I don't think it's relevant to the analysis you're being asked to undertake in reviewing a determination made by your acting building commissioner. Similarly, things were said about the need the perceived need, the actual need, the necessity of this sort of a facility in the city, and then in this particular location within the city, in the presence of other similar facilities within the community. And again, the need for this sort of a facility, not part of the analysis in any of the case law that has been cited by counsel for the applicant or that I'm going to speak to momentarily, and not really relevant to your analysis of what's before you, which is a determination made by the building commissioner. So let's get to what is before you, right? So you've heard a lengthy presentation both at the outset and then just summarized by counsel for the applicant about educational purpose. And I look back several times tonight at what the agenda item said, and it says here, I'm just going to read it aloud. I know members of the public have probably read it for themselves. This is an appeal to overrule the building commissioner's decision under the Fitchburg zoning ordinance that they are required to seek a special permit and site plan approval. So those are two separate things, special permit and site plan approval, for the medication-assisted therapy clinic use of the subject property due to the fact that Spectrum's proposed use, and this is their assertion, of course, qualifies as an educational use exempt under, and then it cites the provisions of the zoning ordinance. So the claim is that this is an educationally exempt use. So what does that mean? We've heard a lot about the Dover Amendment. Dover Amendment protects educational uses, religious uses, other institutional uses, agriculture. What does that mean exactly? Well, there's a body of case law. Many of the cases have been cited to by counsel already. You've heard about the one of the more recent cases, the McLean Hospital case in Lincoln. You heard about one of the older cases, the Fitchburg Housing Authority cases from right here in the city. And so there's a two-part test that's established by these cases. It was a two-part test 30, 40 years ago. It continues to be a two-part test today. Part one, is the program or does the program have an educationally significant goal? And we'll talk in a moment about education, but that's the first part of the test. And so that's what you need to analyze. And I know you're going to say, well, yeah, but the question before us is, did the building inspector make an error? Well, in order to determine whether the acting building commissioner properly ruled, you need to determine whether this is an exempt educational use. And so you have to apply this two-part test. Part one, does the program have an educationally significant goal? And then if the answer to that first question is yes, there is an educationally significant goal, even if it's one of many, well, then the second part, equally as important, is the primary or dominant purpose of the program educational? Primary or dominant purpose? And different terminology has been used, but that's the essence of it. And so on the first part of the test, whether the program has an educationally significant goal, I would concede and I would urge the board to acknowledge that the definition of education is somewhat different today than it was 40 years ago, for better or for worse. Education, traditional education, is not all that the Dover Amendment protects. There are types of education that are not traditional, not schools or educational, not colleges and universities. The example would be the Lincoln case. The Lincoln case involved McLean Hospital. Hospital's right in the word. Wasn't a methadone clinic, wasn't a drug rehabilitation clinic. It was a care facility for individuals with behavioral problems. And there was a therapist on staff, and they were able to persuade the court in that case that they had enough of an educational component that it was the primary or dominant purpose of that program. And they had to do so at length. They litigated all the way to the Supreme Judicial Court. And that case was decided just 4 years ago. Conversely, we have other cases, again cited to by counsel for the applicant, cases like the Regis College case, which you heard referenced as well, the Whitensville Retirement Society case. These are more recent cases. Regis was decided, I want to say, in 2012. Whitensville, I can't remember the year, but I want to say it was 2010 maybe, so right around the same time frame. In Regis College, I've got a quote from the case right in front of me. It indicated here that a purely residential facility, that was a residential facility that was being proposed, may not add an informal educational component merely as a smokescreen in order to obtain favorable protection under the Dover Amendment. So in that case, there was an educational component that was alleged by the proponent of the use, but it was determined that that was just a smokescreen for what they were really doing, and what they were really doing was residential use, and it didn't qualify for the educational exemption, not because there wasn't education, so it satisfied that first part of the test, but it wasn't the primary or dominant purpose. In the Whitensville Retirement Society case, there was an informal arts and crafts program which did not render a nursing home educational. Again, the court looked at it and said, this is a nursing home is a nursing home is a nursing home. The fact that you're offering an informal arts and crafts program for an hour a day doesn't turn your nursing home into an educational facility. Yes, that's an educational component, but it's not the primary or dominant purpose. So that's the law. It's that two-part test. And the difficult task for this board is to apply that test to the facts that you find. And that's your role as fact finder, is to hear the facts. You've heard them tonight, to review the materials before you, to determine through a review of the description of the program. I heard questions asked. They were wise questions about what's your curriculum, how many hours a day are you going to be providing treatment versus how many hours a day are you going to be educating the students or patients, whatever you will call them, who are attending the facility. That's what your board needs to be looking at, and you need to weigh that in light of that two-part test, and you have to answer those questions. Is there an educationally significant goal? If the answer is no, the inquiry is over. But if the answer is yes, well, then you look to the second part and say, okay, is that goal the primary or dominant purpose of this particular program? And if the answer to that is yes, well, then you have an exempt use. If the answer to that is no, the use is not exempt. And all that means is that it can be regulated. One final point I want to make about regulation. If it can be regulated, well, then you affirm the determination of the building commissioner, because therefore this use is subject to a special permit and site plan approval. If you determine that the use is exempt, and this was touched upon earlier by the chair, exempt uses can still be made subject to site plan approval. They're exempt from special permits, the statute says so, but even an exempt use can be made subject to site plan approval. We like to call it site plan review light, because it's a lesser version of site plan review, because it's limited by the language of the statute, which identifies those areas that the site plan review authority can evaluate, things like bulk and height of structures and parking and things of that sort. But nevertheless, it's still a non-discretionary site plan process that can be applied even to an exempt use.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would you agree that if we find that the use is not exempt, we need to make a second determination of whether the application of the ordinance was correct?
So I think you should. I could argue that if you make the determination that it's non-exempt, then the decision stands, but I suppose there's no harm in the board looking again at what the decision says, because again, the statement of the agenda item is that the property was required to seek both a special permit and site plan approval under section 181.3 use regulations and pursuant to the table. So you could opine on whether that was the appropriate categorization of the use, and therefore the special permit and site plan review would be required.
Okay. Thank you, counsel.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to close the hearing without objection. All right, and we're going to move to board deliberations. We have just heard the two-prong test, and I do think the first question we should address is whether or not this is an exempt use under the Dover Amendment, and we need to discuss whether the program has an educationally significant goal and whether that educationally significant goal is the primary or dominant purpose of this facility. I'm going to go around for comment. Now, I want to note, Mr. Reynolds, you are our alternate member, but a very valuable participant in discussion. But where we are thankfully up to 5 full members, will not be voting on the matter. So do you have a comment on that two-prong test, either prong?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Byrne.
Madam Chair, you said that we should first discuss the Dover Amendment as to how it would apply to our clients over here.
Correct.
Okay. Back in your conversation with the attorney, you asked her if they would be able to function or have their facility opened without giving any drugs. Her answer to you was no, because that's the heart of our program. Says it all to me, anyway. It says it all. Do they have a set goal? They do. Besides making money, it's to try and get some person into recovery within a 2-year period. She said they have never accomplished it, so I don't know whether they got the goal or not, but anyway, it's supposed to be there. And now, is education the predominant and the prominent primary purpose? It is not. because it's like the chicken and the egg. Why are the people there? They're there to get the methadone. You have to take my classes if you're going to get the methadone. Classes are ancillary to grabbing the drug. So my opinion is they definitely need a special permit and a site plan review.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Mr. Talbot, any comment for deliberation on the two-prong test?
I agree with Mr. Byrne totally.
Okay. Mr. Gallagher?
Yes, I also wish to associate with Mr. Burns.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Mr. McLaughlin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The website predominantly refers to medical, okay? It's a component that I was looking at. Also, you know, Dover Amendment, we hear that all the time with a lot of cases that come before us of this type, you know, of educational. The Dover Amendment has been around for a while, right?
So have we.
The Dover Amendment, as people have stated, is vague, right? And broad. And I hear a lot of attorneys use this key word. What was the intent? Okay? I think the intent around the Dover Amendment was that it was for truly a school-type, university-type, educational facility. Through the presentation tonight, there was some component related to education, but predominantly this is a dispensary. This is a medical facility based on what I have heard today in presentation and what information has been provided to this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Again, I just want to say that I do think that the applicant has a very important purpose. I think rehabilitating persons who suffer from any kind of substance abuse to enable them to function is a valuable service and a valuable service to any community, whether it serves people in the community or outside of the community. And I think your goals in doing that are very laudable. But as we went through the application and the questioning tonight, we had a form of intent which was centered around medical. We have personnel centered around medical. We have a facility where no attendee is not receiving medication. And we have no willingness to locate without the ability to administer medication. Because that's the crux of the program. We do have some private payment, which may come for any reason, but we have otherwise insurance and DPH payment. I agree that there is some education going on at this facility. I do not agree that it is the primary purpose. So I think that this does fail the second test that was just discussed by Attorney Costa. I also believe that the most appropriate description in the ordinance is medical treatment center, a facility that provides outpatient treatment whose primary use includes the on-site dispensing of medication as a form of treatment. And I'm going to remind the applicant and the public that is allowable here by special permit. It's allowable by special permit. It's allowable with a site plan, which, regardless of our decision, you would be looking at anyway. So for those reasons, although I appreciate the presentation, and while I understand the expressions regarding location, this is not the forum for that. It's not the question that's before us. That would be a question at a site plan review by the planning board. So for that reasons, I'm inclined to find against the request for the appeal. At this point in time, unless any other member has a comment, I am going to look for first a motion on whether or not the appeal should be granted because the applicant is an exempt educational use under the Dover Amendment. Would someone make that motion?
You want a motion in the affirmative with the request to overturn the building commissioner's decision?
Correct.
I'll make that motion under ZBA 2024-2.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Okay. So I'm going to remind the board that this is a motion in the affirmative, as we must make with our motions, and I would grant the appeal overturning the building commissioner's decision. A nay would deny the appeal and maintain the building commissioner's decision. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
That is a unanimous opposed, and the appeal on the basis of educational exemption is denied. Can I have a motion on the appeal that the buildings commissioner's determination that the applicant is a medical treatment center requiring a special permit and site plan for allowance?
I'll make that motion under ZBA 2024-2 as stated by the chair.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. And again, a reminder that this is a motion in the affirmative. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. I see the board is confused.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is a motion in the affirmative. We did not take the full vote, so I'm going to explain it. A vote in favor of this motion would allow the appeal against finding that the applicant is not a medical treatment center. And a vote against the motion would deny the appeal. I will again call a vote on the motion. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously opposed. The appeal is denied. I again want to thank everyone for their participation tonight, and I wish the applicant good luck, and have a great evening.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Good night,
Good night.
zonings.